So I do not believe that the Democrat Party is going to try to replace Joe Biden. And the only way this is going to happen is if Biden himself decides to stand down. And right now, it just doesn't seem like that's going to happen. So I think it's a long shot at this time that we're going to see a different candidate than Joe Biden ever in this race for the Democrats. And historically, I just look to examples such as Dianne Feinstein and Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Strom Thurmond to tell me that the Democrat Party is just opposed to the idea of standing in the way of its geriatrics whose best days were behind them, and it just lets them do what they want to do. The party as a whole has no apparent desire to stand in the way of these people if they decide they want to continue doing what they're doing. And so for that reason, I feel that we're most likely going to see Biden in this race through November, unless he himself decides that it's time to bow out, which could happen too. I have no idea what's going on in the mind of Joe Biden. Frankly, it seems like there's not a whole lot going in the mind of Joe Biden sometimes, at least not a lot that makes a whole lot of sense. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about me saying who I would personally choose to replace Joe Biden if in fact he does get replaced. Like, who should the Democrats run at the top of their ticket this year? And my choice in that regard is Gretchen Whitmer. And there's a couple basic reasons for that. One, she's 52 years old. So instantly they could replace this geriatric candidate who is suffering from clear cognitive decline with a sprightly young woman who has all of her mental faculties in place. And she'd be running then against another geriatric clown, Donald Trump, who, while he certainly has more energy than Joe Biden, also has clear issues with going off on wild tangents and not being able to stick to a specific point. And I don't really have much confidence that Donald Trump isn't facing cognitive decline as well. So the Democrats would then, if they choose to run Gretchen Whitmer, they'd have a 52-year-old running against a guy who's, what, 78, 79, and who would be in his 80s by the time his administration really gets underway in the middle of next year. So that's the first point. The Democrats would all of a sudden have youth on their side in an election that everyone was primed to think was between two old men. B is that Donald Trump already has issues with the female vote, and the Democrats running a woman would just would be the icing on the cake in that regard. They'd amp up that advantage another few levels. The third is that obviously she's from Michigan, and she appears to be fairly popular in Michigan. Obviously, conservatives in Michigan don't like her. Michigan is a highly contested swing state. Not only is she popular in Michigan, but the fact that she's popular in Michigan tells us that she would most likely do fairly well in the other Rust Belt swing states like Wisconsin and Ohio. And right now with Biden, they're talking about how Minnesota is in play. Minnesota should not be in play in an election between Democrats and Republicans. And if the Democrats were running Gretchen Whitmer, Minnesota would go back to being a safe blue state for the Democrats. Another reason is that she's pretty middle of the road. She's not an extreme leftist by any means. Like, no one would accuse this woman of being like a Bernie progressive. So she's pretty safe in that regard. She's not going. The Republicans would only laughably try to paint her as like an extremist. No one would believe that Gretchen Whitmer is an extremist. And the final reason I'm going to stay here, and this might ruffle a few feathers, but she's hot. I think it would be pretty cool to have a president that I'd actually want to bang. Never in my life have I been even remotely attracted to a president partly because I'm just not attracted to men, but also they've all been either decrepit old men or goofy looking guys. I think it would be pretty cool to have a really attractive woman as president. I currently am not voting in this election, but I would absolutely vote for Gretchen Whitmer, if for no other reason than the fact that I want a president that I'd sleep with.